Good evening. Today is March 17th. S&P 500 was down this morning after trading again in a very narrow range overnight, but sold off a little after the open as the news warrants woke. Nancy Pelosi said that Cuomo allegations are credible and serious, but she came short of calling for his resignation.
Well, she said that if the investigation came up with a verification, then he should resign.
Right.
And I think Biden said that not only should he be resigned, but he should be prosecuted.
Right.
Where did you see that thing about New York Magazine finding 60 people who
No,
said...
30. Yeah, it's New York Magazine reports new allegations of inappropriate behavior by Cuomo from 30 women in a cover story published by New York Friday, March 13th.
Oh, good. They've kept that surprise.
Right.
Yelena, do they have a proverb in Russia called "Physician, heal thyself"?
No.
Okay, well, it's a very common proverb in the United States, and what it means is that the doctor should take care to cure his own symptoms, cure his own diseases, before he prescribes a remedy for patients. And it doesn't only apply to doctors, but...
Right. No, in Russia, it's a shoemaker without shoes. So kind of similar.
Well, I think it applies to the president. He better be careful.
Exactly.
Because
all the sniffing, good thing for COVID. Maybe he loses sense of smell and stops smelling other people's hair.
As you know, the French are very good at this. There's a way of smelling someone that's equivalent to showing your arousal. I mean, you can smell them behind the ears, and you can smell them in a very, very sexual way, and that's the way men in power do it. Anyway, continue with this fascinating day.
So then the market for most of the day was staying in the range, waiting for Dr. Powell to tell us what's next, and he certainly didn't disappoint. He said that we have stronger economy and higher inflation, but he will keep financial conditions highly accommodative for a long time. He specifically said that it's not time to start talking about tapering at all, and he will give as much advance notice about tapering as possible. And on that, S&P 500 rallied over 40 points and set another new highs today. So I'd like to ask you, Victor, a question. How many times in a row can you get lucky? Because that's exactly what you predicted. And
I think what I think is that more than being lucky a few times in a row, that when you're lucky as frequently as I've been recently, especially with these last two open market meetings, which I was able to take out about 160 full points. A person should stop when he's hit a lucky streak, rather than when I'm thrown out for being completely random. So I'm not going to make a prediction for tomorrow, because I should follow that advice.
Well, then I have to ask you, what about prediction for Friday? It's quadruple witching expiration. So if you skip tomorrow, maybe you can give us a little prediction for Friday quad witching. Will we hit 4,000?
Remember when I started out trading, this was many, many years ago, few $100,000, and I ran it up to 20 million. But then I realized that it was luck, and that my luck could change. So I told my employees, one of whom is my perfect wife, I said, when I lose half, no matter what I say, close me out of my positions. And you know the story of Scylla and Charybdis, when Odysseus was between. Oh, actually, when he passed the sirens, who had beautiful voices, and they always lured sailors to their destruction. But he wanted to hear the beautiful music, so he put wax in his ears, and he told his hands on board that no matter what he said, that they shouldn't let him listen, and they shouldn't let him go to the lure of the sirens, because that's when the ships were wrecked. So I told my employees, no matter what I say, when I lose half, get me out. Well, it was at that time that I was playing racquetball, and I was playing a very good player named Ruben Gonzalez, became one of the top pros, and he had a court club that he was the pro in Staten Island. And I went to Staten Island, which was about an hour and a half away from my office. And when I started the game, of course, I got on the phone, I was still up the maximum of 20 million. But after the first game, I made a call. I said, how are we doing? They said, oh, you lost half. I said, what, in one game? It went into extra points. And they said, yeah, and we sold you out. I said, what? You sold me out? I said, how could you do that? I was playing a game. I said, well, you told us not to listen to you. And they sold me out. But before they could get out of the positions, in those days, there was tremendous vig. The 10 million had vanished to 5 million.
Oh my God.
So I'd lost 75% after one game. And Ruben said to me after the second game, he said, Vicky, he said, you seemed like something was bothering you. You weren't playing very, very well in that second game at all. I beat you very handily. So anyway, it's good. It's good when you have a lucky streak to call it a day. And I will. No matter what you say, don't try to.
Well, I have to. Our viewers, that's what they like, but I understand. And also the bonds
don't try to lure me into
wait
self-destruction.
till I start singing. But also the bonds made new low today. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, that's exactly, yes, I have a comment. Do you have my checkerboard?
I do.
Now, for the benefit of those unfortunate listeners who don't play checkers, that is a pair of pants. The black king is in between two white singletons. And whichever way the singleton goes, the black king will jump. I luckily said last night that the Fed was in a pair of pants. They were victimized by a pair of pants. The last time there was a Fed meeting, it was down 140 big points. and Dow about 1,200 points. So the last thing that they wanted was to create another large decline in the stock market. So if they did that, people would say, oh, you're whatever the wokes are doing is bad, and we have to stop that. So they couldn't allow another big stock market decline to occur. But however, people like the crocodile remembered what the last outcome of the Fed meeting was. It was maybe the second or third largest decline that there has been in the last year. So everybody was waiting for another decline of 1,200 Dow points. So they were able to take it down to, I guess, about 400 Dow points. They took the S&P down to down 30 from the 56 level to the 28 level, and it looked terrible. It looked like the end of the world. And of course, one of the lessons that our listeners know, is that it's darkest near the end of a tunnel. There's an old expression: a boy fell down a well. He was holding on to a rope, and 100 people came, and they said, please keep holding on. They were afraid that if he let go, he'd fall to the bottom and be smashed and drown. It turned out that he was about 6 inches from the bottom. And he let go, he fell to the bottom, and he was saved. In any case, that's what happened. That's what happened to the stock market. Sure enough, the Fed was not in a mood to risk bringing the stock market down another 1,200 points. So what did they do? They brought it up. They brought it up a fast 40 points, fast 400 points in the Dow. Now, on the other hand, now you asked before about the bonds,
Mm-hmm.
and that involves a little thinking and a story, because above all, we have to have woke, and we have to buy some votes, and we have to hand out some emoluments, hand out some goodies. When we do that, the problem is that eventually the bond vigilantes start saying, well, what happens if you keep handing out goodies, and there's not any recourse, there's nothing to balance it. You're going to tighten, you're going to reduce the money supply, you're going to change the reserve requirements so that the banks aren't. Anyway, as Chance Powell says, we're not in danger of tightening. They don't want to talk about tightening, but they still want to get interest rates to a level that's scary. They're scary right now. What are they? The long bond is 2.5%. It hit a 170. It hit a new low, of course, and it hit a 174, 164 today, but It closed near the bottom at 165.10. So, right, so it's in a scary level. So what are they going to do? There's a lot of talk about inflation and expectations. If the inflation expectations become rampant, start worrying about inflation, the prices increasing. There's one solution to increasing rates, which I said, luckily, which I guessed, the Fed, they might know. I mean, sometimes these things happen. There's an invisible evil hand. It's not like, and the invisible, it's not like they're only interested in their jobs and incurring favor with the swamp. It's just that they act that way, and so they're in a position where they're not going to tighten, and interest rates are already becoming a good alternative to stocks. So what's the solution? Oh, I know what the solution is. We have to have a tax increase on the wealthy, on those who are above the average. We have to take away things like Hank Reardon of Tesla. We have to take away the people who are making a lot of money. We don't have to worry about the people like the Palindrome and the Sage, who have their money all sheltered and or have given it away in a trust in some way. So if we increase the interest rate and we're not going to tighten, there's only one solution: Ghostbusters. Yeah. Who are you going to call when you have a situation like that? It's going to be the tax boys, and that's the way of reducing the pressure on of the deficit. I mean, we're not going to reduce the Fed's quantitative easing. We're not going to reduce, as they say, for the next 2 or 3 years. They're not planning to increase the rates. So the Ghostbusters are going to increase taxes. That's the solution. That will pay for the deficit. President Biden says he will, not only will he increase the taxes, but he will get the Democrat votes for a tax increase, as if he has to worry about Democratic votes for anything. And then he says, he was asked if he thought he would be able to garner any Republican support on the tax increase. And not only, let's make some fun and try to humiliate as if the only reason that the opposition doesn't want the tax increases. I may not get it, but I'll get the Democratic votes for the tax increase. If we just took the tax rate back to what it was when Bush was president, the top rate paid was 39%. That would raise $230 billion in 1 year. And then he adds, to insult to injury. Yet they are complaining because I am providing a tax credit for childcare, for the poor, for the middle class, as if that's why the opposition doesn't want the tax increase. And then, of course, to add insult to injury, any tax increase will have to be scored by the impartial, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. And how does a congressional, if they were to raise the tax rate to 100%, say it was 50% now, if they were to raise it to 100%, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office would say that would increase revenues by 500%, because they score it for the next 5 years. They don't take account of what they call dynamic scoring, which is that when taxes are increased, people don't work as hard, and that capital gains go down, and that whenever there's a tax reduction, the revenues that are raised go up because people work harder and there's incentive to actually realize the gains, as the entrepreneurs and the Hank Reardons of the world work harder. It creates tremendous benefits for the other people. And like Bill Gates, I'm sure he's in favor of a tax increase, and Warren Buffett. Bill Gates doesn't realize that with his innovations, and he's created so much well-being for so many people. It's infinitely greater than the amount of money that he's cleared. But anyway, people like Bill Gates come to the fore, and other people come. That's what happens when you reduce taxes, and that's why revenues always increase. They used to call this trickle down, but I dare not say that because I'm already losing a tremendous number of subscribers on Twitter, because they don't realize that I'm woke, and I'm just that I want the stock market to go up, and the more woke it is, the better it is.
So what do you think are the implications of all the tax increases for the US stock market? And
it's terrible. It's terrible because, but it doesn't affect the billionaires who have unrealized gains in the hundreds of billions, the people, the FANGs, and they'll make out regardless. But for the common man, the average person, if his capital gains go up from 22% to 40%, and with all the tax preferences, it will double. That means that whatever gains they have are worth only 80% as much as it was. They're talking about the tax increase in 2022.
Well, most of average American doesn't have any money in the stock market outside of 401ks and other tax sheltered accounts. So capital gains is not going to affect an average American per se.
What about the 5 million, 10 million new investors? Well, I think
they're going to lose the money regardless of the taxes.
50% of the population owns stocks directly.
15%?
There are a lot of people there. There's a lot of wealth, and eventually all the people in the sheltered accounts, the IRAs and so on, eventually when they realize that their gains, they're going to have to pay taxes, and it's a tremendous disincentive. And people, as the year end comes, people are going to start saying, well, why should I wait until 2022? They shrewdly hold the tax increase back until after the congressional elections of 2022. In any case, but people will be selling. As taxes increase, the incentive to own stocks and the incentive to hold them decreases. I mean, that that should be apparent that most people would like to keep their money. They don't want to share it with the government. And there are say 150 million people who own it directly, and when you count the indirects, it's much larger. But anyway, I have a solution. I
Okay.
have I have a solution to this, to everything, and it was inspired by the directive by the CDC that all children of 2 years, starting from 2 years old, should wear masks. And I say, let's let's have newborns wear masks. Everybody wear masks, and furthermore, let's let's have everybody go to bed with masks and not get out of bed. Just stay in bed forever, and that way their carbon impact will be reduced, and we won't have to worry about lockdowns and social gatherings,
Right.
and we'll just bring all all social activity to a halt. So that's my solution. Everybody everybody doesn't work. The government will hand out goodies and welfare to everybody, and the Fed will continue. There won't be much inflation because people won't be buying things from the bed. So modern monetary theory will come into play, and the Fed can just buy all the government debt. I'm serious. I mean, that's what we're coming to. We're coming to activity is controlled by the progressives, and which is very good for the stock market. So I'm not making any predictions, especially for tomorrow, because after a Fed meeting like this, it's rather bearish. But I'm not predicting anything. And so what's happening with Governor Cuomo? Is he still aroused or what?
Yeah, I try to stay away from political news. It's just getting a little too crazy lately, just too much.
Yes, but it's the political news that drives the market, like the Fed. I mean, if the Fed were trying to do its job, they wouldn't be letting interest rates go up so much. And now that they don't have the governor berating the former president every day and attributing all the problems of New York to the former president, somehow he's not as iconic. He's not a sacred cow anymore. So
The main problem with Governor Cuomo is that he is white male. So, he had to be brought down eventually, not to be a competition to Kamala Harris in the next run. So,
I agree. I agree. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that happening. But everybody says he had no friends, and he had a very, very unhappy workforce. And I don't know these investigations, how they could possibly come up with exonerating him. They have so much contemporary evidence, and everybody was protecting him for so long. But now apparently the people who are going to vote on his impeachment are the judges that he appointed. And anyway, all that is relevant, and I think
Right. It's just depressing, but relevant. Yes.
the person running against him next time is much more liberal than he is, and she's one of those dynamic scoring. I mean, non-dynamic scoring. She'll be thinking that if you increase the taxes on the wealthy by 10%, that it's going to increase your revenues by 10%. Actually, it will increase Florida's revenues by 30%, because all the above average in New York will move out. But they don't take that into account. They don't realize that people have choices, that they should have choices, and that
Right.
it's not the purpose of life to give to the CDC and the FDA and so on. But
So, do you think that capital gain taxes should be in line with federal income tax, or should one be higher than the other? I mean, I know that ideally you want them both zero, but that's not the world we're in. So, do you think that they should?
it's the world that we're in places like Asia, and that's why Asia is going to grow much faster. It's compound interest. If your rate of return is 20% and you're paying a 10% taxes, then you're growing by 18% a year. But here,
So, should we invest in Asia instead of US? Do you think their markets are for longer term drift?
I don't know anything about anything. And what I am trying to psych out the Fed in that pair of pants. I tried to find a sports analogy of what the situation they were in. Someone suggested an onside kick. You possibly can return your own onside kick and possibly score, but if you don't, you're going to give the other side an easy touchdown. And it's not quite the situation that we were in. It's sort of, I'll have to think of what the sports analogy, but let's end this because the proverb of the day, one that Tom always said is, if you draw, you both win. So stop trying to take care of the draws, and that might take care of the wins. Okay, here's a proverb of the day. If you want to be certain of your positions, you must begin by doubting it. I doubt where the market is going in the next 2 days. And I have an adversary, a friendly adversary on Twitter. He's Mr. Ag Trader. He's always bearish. And whenever I say, like when I said that today the Fed wouldn't dare to do anything that would create a stock market decline, he berated me, humiliated me, and said, "How could you be so foolish with bonds going down to the one, the 54 handle?" I was drawn to the Maltese Falcon, where the fat man had an adversary like the Ag Trader, and he said, I like a man who's very certain of his position. And maybe you'll find a bird. Oh, by the way, I have a lot of things to say about bird, which we'll save for next next week anyway. So I admire a man who's certain, but and who's plain spoken, but he should follow Tom Whiswell's proverbs. If you want to be certain of your position, you must begin by doubting it. The ag trader says that, well, he knows that the market has a drift, the stock market has a drift to 50,000 for the year, but he tries to slip in a bearish time in the stock market like today. I don't know anyone who's ever made money on his shorts except who should boast about the biggest boaster in the world, Bill Gross. He supposedly made $10 million and by shorting game stocks. I don't know how he did that because it's gone up in the last week a few 100%, but very bad to boast. Got to be one of the most important things in the market, aside from trying to stay with the weather gauge, is to be very humble. And if you read Tom Whiswell's 50,000 Proverbs, of which I have about 10,000 in front of me, I have 4 more books. He is the most humble person. He was undefeated for 25 years, and he'd always say in the middle of a game, he says, Vic, I'm in over my head. I better simplify. And that's a very good thing for people to do. They should always simplify. Best thing to simplify is to cover your shorts. Better than that is never to short. Okay. Thank you, Miss Yelena. I'll try to have something better, more attractive to our listeners for tomorrow. And
What's more
yourself.
attractive than making money?
Well, I like to keep you on the edge of your seat also. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank
Victor.
you.
Have a good night.
Bye.